All right, let's dive into one of ancient Rome's strangest and, honestly, most powerful institutions, the Vestal Virgins. For more than 1,000 years, this sisterhood was this incredible mix of superstition, raw state power, and just a whole lot of theatrical fear. They were right at the very heart of what it meant to be Roman.
You know, this quote just nails it. The Vestals weren't just some priestesses. No, they were the city's spiritual security blanket. Their purity was seen as a direct line to the stability of the entire empire. If they messed up, even a little, all of Rome would freak out, thinking the gods themselves were angry.
And everything, I mean everything, about the Vestals was symbolic. Think of them as living, breathing billboards for divine approval. It got so intense that even a tiny public trip-up, like a sneeze at the wrong time, could be read as a terrible warning from the heavens. Their whole job was just to exist, perfectly, to prove that the gods were still on Rome's side.
So, how did you even become a Vestal? Well, it wasn't something you signed up for. It wasn't a calling. The Romans had a special word for the process, captio, which literally means the seizure. And that's exactly what it was, a state-sponsored kidnapping just wrapped up in a pretty religious ceremony.
The checklist for picking one of these girls was unbelievably strict. First off, you had to be from a top-tier noble family. You had to be physically perfect. No flaws allowed. And you had to be smart. Oh, and you had to be between 6 and 10 years old. Any little imperfection, like a limp or even a stutter, and you were out. They were basically looking for a calm, obedient, and very impressionable child.
The actual moment of selection was marked by this one phrase, and it is so chilling. The head priest, the Pontifex Maximus, would just touch the chosen girl and say, "Te amata capio," which means, "I seize you, beloved." It's so sweet and so horrifying at the same time, right? It perfectly captures what their life was about. Being treasured, but being a prisoner.
And once you were seized, that was it. Your old life, completely erased. They'd take you to the Temple of Vesta, ritually cut your hair to symbolize breaking all ties with your family and your past, and then they'd dress you in new robes. You were reborn with a new job and a new identity, a daughter of the state.
So, your new home was the House of the Vestals. And, this place was a stunning marble palace right next to the Roman Forum. We're talking fountains, gardens, beautiful rooms, pure luxury. But all that splendor came with a catch. You were never, ever allowed to leave. It was a 5-star gilded cage.
Inside this fancy prison, one single job trumped everything else. You had to keep the sacred flame of Vesta burning, day and night. This fire was like the spiritual Wi-Fi of ancient Rome. As long as it was lit, the city was safe. But if it went out, absolute chaos. The pressure on these women was just immense.
Their service was basically a 30-year contract broken up into 3 distinct decades. The first 10 years, you're an apprentice, learning hundreds of complicated rituals. The next 10 years, you're a full-on Vestal, doing the job. This was the peak of your career. And the final 10 years, you become a mentor, teaching the next generation everything you know.
And that decade of active service was just a whirlwind of precise, non-stop duties. It wasn't just about the flame. They had to prepare sacred ingredients for rituals, guard Rome's most important documents like wills and treaties, and they had to look perfectly calm and pure during public ceremonies, even animal sacrifices. Their purity wasn't a private thing. It was a public performance, and it had to be flawless.
And this is where we get to the real paradox of their lives. The Vestals had privileges that no other Roman woman could even dream of, but at the same time, they faced punishments that were more severe than anything anyone else faced. Their life was this constant balancing act between incredible highs and terrifying lows.
Just look at this contrast. On one hand, they had amazing freedom. They could own property, write their own wills, and walk around Rome without a male guardian, which was unheard of. They even had front-row seats at the Colosseum. They were so sacred that if they accidentally met a prisoner on his way to execution, they could pardon him with a single touch. But on the other hand, the punishments. Let the flame go out, you get a beating. Break your vow of chastity, you get buried alive.
And yet, that vow of chastity was everything. The fate of Rome was believed to be literally tied to the Vestal's purity. This had nothing to do with personal morals. It was all about cosmic security. So as you can imagine, they lived under this constant, merciless microscope where a single rumor could send the entire city into a panic.
Now, the punishment for breaking that vow was just horrific. See, a Vestal was sacred, so it was illegal to spill her blood. To get around this, the Romans came up with this chilling loophole.
They would entomb the accused Vestal in a tiny underground chamber with just a little bit of food and water and seal it up, leaving her to die. It was a legal way to execute someone without technically executing them, and they made it a huge, terrifying public spectacle.
But for those who made it, for those who survived their 30 years of service, an incredible reward was waiting: retirement. At about 40 years old, they were released back into the world. They were given a pension and a level of legal and financial freedom that was basically unheard of for any woman in ancient Rome.
Now, you'd think after all that, they'd be eager to get married. And a lot of wealthy Roman men wanted to marry them, hoping to get some of that sacred status. But here's the crazy part: most of them chose to stay single. After decades of being prisoners in a gilded cage, the idea of giving up their new freedom to a husband just didn't sound very appealing.
For over 1,000 years, through republics and empires, the Vestals endured. But their time finally came to an end in 394 CE. Christianity was on the rise, and the Emperor Theodosius I outlawed all pagan traditions. The temple was closed, and the sacred flame of Vesta, after burning for more than a millennium, was finally put out forever.
So what do we make of them? Were the Vestal virgins these cherished symbols of Roman stability, or were they just pawns in a system of state control, their entire lives used as a tool to keep the public calm? They were revered, they were powerful, and they were feared, but in the end, they were also disposable. Their story really shows you the complicated dance between religion, power, and fear at the very center of the Roman Empire.